What's up, guys? Welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates III, and today I'm sitting down with the most beautiful Closers Olympics judge of all time, Miss Kristina Aguilera. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking.
So,
I feel like I didn't
uh,
have great competition on that.
I know, right? Well, yeah, Steve and Mitt. I mean, I not many choices, but I'm going to run with it, okay? Since I've been saying it since day one.
For
I
sure.
love it. We'll talk more about that towards the end. But for the people that don't know who you are, which if you don't know who
Yeah.
Kristina is, you're living under a rock. But Miss Kristina, tell the people who you are and what it is that you have done in real estate investing.
Yeah, so I started wholesaling 9 years ago, and I got into it because I am a product of Rich Dad. So I went to one of those weekend seminars, got sold on a vision. I had never seen it before. I didn't know anybody that did real estate investing. At that time, I was like 23, 24. So it just like blew my mind. I had been around business, but not really, I guess I didn't know much about entrepreneurship outside of like logistics companies because that's what my family is in. Um, and yeah, it kind of evolved. I started wholesaling, and from wholesaling, it just catapulted. I was able to raise a ton of private money in the process of that. Building connections in wholesaling. So that's why people, like I love wholesaling because it's everything, and it's always an ATM, and it allows me to scale. But I bought with a partner 300 houses in 3 years, leveraging private money, and it was psychotic. It was crazy. I would not recommend unless you know what you're doing.
Right.
And yeah, it was really challenging. It was a very tough season. And it's kind of catapulted into so many different avenues, growth. Like I learned so much through buying rentals, analyzing deals, and really like streamlining my process ultimately, because if I didn't do that, I was probably going to kill myself.
Right.
From stress, like not anything like crazy, but like from stress and from like the overwhelming feeling of having to constantly make decisions and not knowing where things were at. It was just a really crazy time. But yeah, I mean, that's basically wholesaling, rentals, subject tos, scaling other people's education programs and platforms. And then now I'm like a fractional COO for some of the best wholesalers and real estate investors in the country.
Love it. So I have a question. I want to go all the way back to you
Yeah.
said you're a product of Rich Dad, which
Hmm.
I because I've known you
Yeah.
since you got started. I mean, we
Hmm.
we got started at the same time. It's funny, you're like 9 years. It's like, yep. I mean, we're
Yeah.
we're right there with you. And you talked about, being a product of what I consider one of the big box education programs where essentially hotel seminars, they take you in the
Yep.
back of the room, they say, hey,
They ask
let's
you to
get,
increase your credit card
yeah,
limits.
let's get on the phone with Capital One, baby, and let's get that up. And that's the same thing we did, right? I spent 65. Well, my mom put $65,000 on a credit card so I could learn how to wholesale. I think you were at
90.
90,000.
Yeah.
What for the people that are
I just
listening to
got
this that
chills on
either
my body.
yeah that are either in that position right now or uh just don't even have the way to I guess do that because most people don't have the ability to do it. I mean, even
Yeah.
with those little credit card specialists in the back, how do you overcome that that fear, that just weight of $90,000 of debt? Because that's insane. I mean,
Yeah.
that alone could have been enough to just ruin your life.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's crazy. I literally have chills. I think it's crazy to think of now, but it's not any different, right? Like as you continue to evolve as a person, the debt goes up. Like I'm way more in debt now than I was then.
Right.
Like that's literally the mentality, right? So for me, I think in that moment there was two options, right? And the options were very simple. It was either I was going to crumble and file bankruptcy, which to be honest, didn't seem like the worst thing in the world because I was still alive.
Right.
Like I it wasn't that I wasn't scared of it. I never knew anybody that filed bankruptcy. So it was a healthy fear, but I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Like literally, what is the worst that could happen? I filed bankruptcy? Like I have to go live at my parents' house? Like that just doesn't that the risk of that didn't like it so surpassed the ability and like what I was willing to do. But it came down to two things, right? Either I was going to put myself in a corner and cry and be like, oh, I just made the worst decision of my life, or I was going to actually get out there and do this, right? And I didn't even have all the information, to be honest, right?
Right.
I dropped out of Rich Dad. I paid $90,000, and when I was like in the seminars and stuff, I would ask people like if they'd done deals, and they were like, "No, I haven't done anything." I'm like, "Bro, you're like 9 months and you haven't done a deal. Like this is scary to me." So I'm
Right.
like, I'm not. And here's the thing: it's 90,000, but then you have to travel. You have to be in the seminars. Like you have to take time off. Like there's like a whole evolution of stuff outside of that.
Yep.
And it doesn't make it any different. Like I think regardless of where you are in the journey, whether you've spent 50,000, 100,000, maybe if it's 4,000, right? It's
Right.
moderate in like to whatever that number is for you. Whatever is going to catapult you to change. For some people it's $500. That's everything they have. For me, thankfully I had credit. I was making six figures before I got into real estate. But I was also blowing it. I had no concept of money. I had no concept of business. I was just a salesperson and I was good at it. I was selling insurance. And so I was 20 making $100,000. And that's a really bad place to be in. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's a bad place.
It's so funny you say that because I'll on a much smaller scale. Okay, I'm gonna tell a part of this story I've never told before. And if I haven't, I forgot about
Yay.
it. Okay, my first job was a pizza delivery driver when I was still in high school.
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't have a job prior to that, so my mom and dad gave me a gas credit card for Conoco. Okay, I don't even know if Conoco is still a gas
There's
station,
some. Yeah, there's some
right?
around.
So I was going to Pizza Hut, filling up my gas tank using my mom and dad's credit card. So no expense. And I was making like $7 an hour plus 50 cents a delivery plus my tips. The next thing I know, I'm still in high school and I have $10,000 in my bank account. And I I had no idea what to do. I mean, looking back, it was hilarious. I mean, it was like I bought every CD that ever came out. I'd go to Best Buy like on a daily basis just to buy every CD possible. I was blowing it on like taking my friends out to eat. I was the only person that had money,
Money.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yep.
funny because if you don't know what to do with money, you just start spending it
Yep.
because no one ever talked to me about, hey, RJ, you're 18. Eventually, my mom and dad got the credit card statement. And they said,
Yeah.
whoa, hey, you guys start paying for your own gas. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. That
Yeah.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
it really kind of put me in a weird position early on before I even left home and went to college and did all the things I did. And same thing with you. You're making
Yeah.
$100,000
I
at
graduated
20.
high school when I was 16.
Jeez.
Like I literally had to make big decisions. Like by the time I was 20 when I graduated with my MBA, and that's just like now I like see kids and I'm like, yo, like those are big decisions to make what you want to do with the rest of your life. Like
Yep.
this decision is pivotal. What direction? I went to school for business. So I was like, regardless, something's gonna crack.
Right. So
Like
you keep just pulling stories out for me. I gotta tell another story. This is supposed to be about you, but you're pulling funny stories out, so I gotta tell them. Okay.
let's go.
So all through high school, it was like I'm gonna go to college for business because I knew I wanted to own businesses. That's
Yep.
what I wanted to do in my life. But I also kind of wanted to coach football because I love football and I was a
Yeah.
football player, right? So it was like I don't know. I mean, I'll figure it out. I go to North Texas. I'm doing orientation, and they're like, "Oh, you're a business major." Yep. All right. Here's the classes that you need to choose from, and I'm like, "Where are the business classes? These are all math." And they're like, that is business. And I was like, hold on. I went over, I got the kinesiology, and I was like, wait, badminton, golf, bowling. I was like, hey, I'm going to change my major from business to kinesiology. This seems a lot more
This is
fun.
easier.
And that's how I became a kinesiology major right there. Because I was like, fuck the math. I'm not doing that. I thought we were going to talk about business.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right.
My first degree was like radio television. And it's always good. Like this is like really good context because some people are like, "Oh, you're in real estate. You're successful. Like you did." No. Like everybody's trying to figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
Like you every little crossroad is an opportunity for you. Every little relationship. Like this goes back to even wholesaling, right? There was one man who I wholesaled houses to who changed the trajectory of my life.
Yep.
One person, one relationship, one
Yep.
favor. It was a favor that I did for him that changed the trajectory of my life.
It's amazing, isn't it? But you know what's funny about that, Christina, is there's so many people that have that same story where now looking back, it's like they can point to one or two moments where it's like that decision to do a favor, that decision to go talk to someone at a meetup, that's what changed my life. It wasn't that I was cold calling instead of direct mail, or I figured out, how to talk to a seller when it's like it's just talking to someone.
Yep.
I mean, it's these moments about building relationships that really change your life. And the other thing is not being afraid to make the wrong decision. I
That's
mean,
the
I
point.
think I think you and I look across the board. I've watched you change who you are both physically and business wise drastically. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember the first time you and I ever met was at Max Maxwell's We Live.
Mm-hmm.
I went up to you and I said, "Hey, I've got a deal in St. Louis. I want to try to sell you." And you were like, "It's probably a shitty deal," and you kind of walked off. That was my first interaction with you. Now, I
I was an asshole.
go, I watched you go from being like that to now you are literally one of the sweetest human beings in this industry.
Thank you.
And you're always smiling. You were not happy. Would you agree that at We
No.
Live, that first We Live in Dallas, you were not a happy person?
That weekend was the weekend that I decided I wanted a divorce.
I mean,
So as I sat there and made sure that everybody else had what they needed, my life was falling apart.
yeah. And because I followed your journey so much, and I want to get to what you're doing now
Yeah.
because I think it's important. But I want to get this context to
Yeah.
like,
But it was because of this.
yeah. But I mean, me
This
and
is
you,
all of that.
we kind of know each other from afar, but not like super close. But what I've seen of your journey, I mean, it's incredible to see. Like, and you've been open about sharing it, where it's like, hey, the stress of owning a business impacted me physically. It impacted me financially, and then I made a decision that, hey, the point in being an entrepreneur is to have freedom, to be happy, not to
Right.
be this miserable person that can claim that they own 300 doors before they were 30. That's
Yeah.
some bullshit that goes on a podcast title that no one gives a shit about, you
Yep.
know?
That part.
So
Yeah.
at what point in time, what steps did you take? Because there might be
Yeah.
someone listening to this. It's like, dude, that's me right now.
Yeah.
What did you do to say, this is what I'm going to do to change my life right now?
Yeah. So I'm gonna just kind of bring it back. So at that point, right, that weekend that we met, I had already done 120 wholesale deals. And just for context, like St. Louis is a very interesting market. You could flip, you could have rentals, you could be like, I mean, it's just such a diverse like area. And there is a lot of wholesalers that come to St. Louis and they're like, oh yeah, you could buy houses for cheap. And you don't understand the market, right? So just for a little context, at that point, I had done 120 deals. I had a business partner, and we didn't have a CRM. We didn't have anything. It was constantly on. Like I couldn't breathe. My phone was ringing off the hook. I did not leverage a team. I didn't even know how to delegate. I didn't know anything. I was literally drowning in my skin.
Yep.
But we get into this habit of we're chasing something that is always going to change. And after a couple years of that, right, I'm like, bro, I'm chasing a life that one will probably never fulfill me, right? And two, I don't even know what I want. I don't know what I want. Right? Like I see this like, oh, it's rentals, it's this, it's that. It's like there's so much out there that you can do. And I honestly, I just had to sit down and like reevaluate. I mean, I was like you saying that, honestly, like I remember I was an asshole. So my parents, I sat down with my parents about probably like 3 years ago when I was like going through my journey and all this stuff. And my dad's like, you were a legit asshole. Like I did not like to be around you. And I was like, I didn't even want to be around myself because I was angry. I felt like all this pressure that no one asked me to put on myself but myself.
Yep.
And that's what I had to realize. Like, Kristina, no one's doing this to you. You're doing this to yourself. So I had to kind of restructure how like what that vision actually looked like. And I was never like the kind of person like people would ask me how many doors do you want. I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm chasing. I don't. Um and it took evaluating, it took the people around me calling me out on my shit, to be honest. It was my parents, it was my close friends, it was me going through a divorce. It was it was hitting rock bottom, but it looked like success.
Yeah.
And I was overweight. I had gained like 80 pounds. It was just a terrible season. And if you are in that moment right now where you're trying to figure this out, the best thing that I can say is like give yourself grace that you don't have everything figured out and reach out to somebody that has been there before. For me, I built a village around myself. Like I had money. And like that's what people don't realize. Like when you have money, the resources that you have are the best thing to get you out of where you're going. It is a phone call. I had one of my really good friends call me yesterday. He's like, I'm building this property management company. I'm doing all these things and I'm drowning. You're the only person I thought to call. I'm going to stop everything that I'm doing to help you right now.
Yep.
Like that is why you're in this industry. This is the most beautiful industry. Yes, there's a lot of people that have coaching programs. Like we deserve to get paid for what we're doing. So don't get that twisted. But at the same time, like people have been there before you. They know I have a relationship coach on deck. I have a leadership coach on deck. Like whatever you need, I could probably tie you to someone that can save you from yourself. Cuz that's what it came down to. I needed to save me from me.
Yeah. And you had to be willing to admit to other people that you weren't happy, that you were failing for yourself,
Yeah.
not financially. It was
Yeah.
just like, hey, this is not the life I want to live. And I think that takes a lot of credit because a lot of times people want to do it in silence. And I think you said it really well. You were chasing change, but you didn't know what that change was. You knew you weren't happy, but so you're like, I'm gonna keep going. The change is gonna
It's
come.
coming. It's coming. It's coming.
But what was it?
Yeah.
Buying more doors, creating more chaos.
More problems for myself, more stress. And that's what it looks like. You think, I told this to my friend yesterday. I'm like, sometimes we get so caught up in chasing something that we don't realize that if we slow down right now, put the right infrastructure in place, delegate properly, that is what's going to allow this to be sustainable. I did not do that. At the point, my friend is at 60 doors right now. At 60 doors, I had already gone to 3 property managers, had just taken over my portfolio to self manage. That was my moment to slow down, and I didn't.
So it's funny you say that, delegating and having these processes in place because now what you're doing is the SOP factory, right?
Yes.
And this is funny because uh, SOP is like something that business owners throw around loosely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have these standard operating procedures. And it's like, do you?
Yeah.
Do you really? And it's funny because your journey kind of the reason why you weren't happy is because you didn't have these things in place.
Correct.
And now that's where you are. You're saying, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to help
Yeah.
other business owners make sure they don't make the same mistake. So talk about that. What led you to starting SOP Factory, and what is it in more
Yes.
detail?
So, I think when I hit those 60 doors and I had to take over management, at that point, I only knew three of the tenants' names. And this happened overnight. It was a mutual fire. I had a property that the property manager told me was going to be a $5,000 rehab. And when they took out an extra $10,000 out of my rent, so the rehab was actually 15,000, and that was money that I was expecting. Like I had debt, I had people to pay, and it was just taken out. And I say this like loosely, but that day I realized like why people go to jail for murder. Like it crossed my mind. Like I'm like people go to murder like jail for murder for less than this. Like
Yeah.
you literally could like that was like a really pivotal time in my life where I'm like I don't want to be in this situation. I can't let somebody control me like this. And be able to do that. So overnight I became a property manager, self-managed. And I hired a virtual assistant, and I didn't even know what I was doing. So it was like so hard to like tell her what to do, and she's still my employee now. I'm actually in the process of like exiting and going through a whole life change, and she's kind of helping navigate that. And to be honest, it was having to save myself, right? Like I had to learn how to document something and create an email template and put these things together so that people could help me, because that is when I just I couldn't. It was too much for one person. You can do a wholesale business one person like and make probably 50 to $100,000 a month one person with no help. You could do
Right.
it. You could do probably the same and like a quarter of the work with people in place. And that's what I had to learn. Like I had to change as a leader. But it became a business when I was in a mastermind with Scott Oots, Steve Trang, and they had like micro little pieces of their business that they were like, oh, this is an issue, or this or this is that. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I have a process for that. Like I have it documented. Oh yeah, I have a SKU list for that. I have this, I have that. And they were like, would you be willing to like come and like build like an employee handbook or this or that? And I'm like, yeah, I'll charge $10,000 for that. And they were like, all right, bet. And I made like $40,000 in like a day.
Right.
And I was like, I could literally solve someone's problem and get paid to do that the same way we do in wholesaling. So I still have my wholesaling company. I do about 20 rehabs at a time right now. So like yes, SOP Factory is, but I'm in the business still. Like
Right.
I tell you exactly what's working and what's not that I can see. I'm really good friends with Tiffany and Josh High. Like I help a ton of their students. We have a big network of people. It's not like it's because I'm so close and I'm like, all right, novations. All right, here's your novation SOP. This is how you do it. This is that. This is how you train your team to execute. These are the modules you need to create. This is the curriculum you need to have, because as business owners, we, especially real estate investors, we're very reactive. And that's our problem. We see something and we're like, hey guys, we're going to all start doing novations now. And like,
Right.
you can't just do that.
Yeah.
You have to train people. You have to tell them what is innovation. Like, what does that mean? Like now it's a buzzword, right? But it's you have to get back to the basics. Like people are
So I've
never
got a
going to meet your
question for you.
expectation. Yeah.
So it's back here,
Hmm.
traction.
Yeah.
I like to I like a lot of the book. I
Hmm.
like to also make fun of the book a little bit
Yeah.
because kind of like Novations, several
Hmm.
years ago, everyone was like, hey, you got to read Traction. Who's the visionary? Who's the
Yeah.
integrator? And it's funny because you're kind of both.
I'm a
You're both
hybrid.
a visionary and an integrator. Is
Hmm.
that who you've always been, or are you kind of forcing yourself into one of those roles?
So, initially I was a pure full on visionary. And I was a forced integrator. So it was because I needed to do these things. And it was honestly, I believe it was like God like preparing me for this season of my life to help more people, because I get to profit off of that season of my life. I get to profit off of my pain, my journey, like what the mistakes that I made. I don't want people to have to make those mistakes, right? And it's way bigger than, a conversation with a seller. It's everything that happens after that contract is signed that we fail to realize. Like,
Yes.
there's a whole catapult of things. And even, even with salespeople, it's like the first thing that people hire is another acquisitions manager. Do you understand that that is what causes more work for you?
Yeah.
If you look at everybody that was successful at Closers Olympic, they weren't the people by themselves.
Yeah.
It was the people who had a TC or an admin next to them sending that contract.
Yeah.
Top three.
Right.
Top three had support.
Yeah. Dude,
If you are not
I
focused
had
on
my
your
entire
thing,
team here.
I know.
I mean, they were right here next to me. The literally the deal that I got on Sunday to win the Closers Olympics came from them answering the phone when I was on a bad lead, saying, RJ will call you right back. And they ran in here and handed me the paper and said, you need to call this seller back right now.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
those kind of moments where you're right. You can run a wholesaling business and make $100,000 a month. But what happens when you want to go to South America?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
What
happens
happens
to the
when you want to do
business?
anything? Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the, I think that's the biggest thing, is like it's so much simpler. My dad always used to say, it's not that it's hard. It's not that it's easy. It's that it's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple. If you try to overcomplicate it, if you try to do things that are outside of your zone of greatness, that is where you fail.
Yep.
That is literally where you fail, right? Like, I'm not going to ask RJ to do operational things. I'm not going to ask you to do that. That's not your zone of greatness.
So what I want to know is,
Yes.
what is a fractional COO? Talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit. And uh, maybe someone will comment, oh, RJ's a dumbass, but did you come up with that, or is that actually a thing?
uh I mean, there was fractional CFOs, so I'm like, let me just be
Oh,
a
okay.
fractional COO.
There you go. I like it. All right. So what does that
um
mean?
Yeah, so COOs are chief operating officers. So usually they're the person that leads the operation. You can have a internal COO that actually handles the day to day of an operation. And one of the biggest issues that I saw was, and this was like in my own friends' businesses, right? Steve Tring has a COO. Scott Oots had a COO. There was a lot of guys in our mastermind that had COOs. But because they were running the day to day of the operation, there was no time for documentation of processes. There was no time to gap analysis. There was no time for the thing, like they were in the business. And being a fractional COO with a team, I have a full team of processors, brand developers, all kinds of things. Um, it allows me to look at it from a high level view, unbiased. I'm not in the trenches. I can talk to whoever I need to in the business. I come from an approach of, I'm trying to make your life easier. I'm trying to make your life better. The owner of your company wants to make your life easier. And people are willing to give you the feedback. They want to win. If they can make the same amount of money or more, work less, and be able to like do less of the end of day report, because you're having them write a 30-page report every day because you think people aren't doing anything because
Right.
you don't know how to read a dashboard, that's a you problem. That's a leadership problem. That's not an employee problem. Is it because you didn't onboard them properly? And so that's really what the fractional COO does. So usually for most of my clients, it really depends, but most of my real estate investing clients, the way that it works is I come in, we get access to their Podio systems, we get access to all the tools that they're using. And then during an onboarding call, we just kind of break down the whole business. Like, how is it coming from a lead management to acquisition, and from acquisitions to TC? Do you need to hire an admin? Do you need to hire someone? We support that role. So transaction coordinating, my background when I was like getting into wholesaling, and I was closing deals, I actually took a job as a business development director as at a local title company. And that opened up the floodgates for me. I really understood how paperwork makes the paperwork, right? Like that was the niche. Like I was like, I know title. I know how to clean it up. I know how to make sure that the title company processes a file. I know how to follow up with them. And that's how this started. I'm like, we're so focused on hiring salespeople when most of us are actually really good salespeople. That's not
Right.
what we need. What we need is admin support. It's the transaction coordinator. It's the management of the deadlines, the construction coordinator. And so, yeah, so that's a lot of my investors have multiple exit strategies. They're doing construction, property management. So basically documenting all those businesses. And a lot of times, like sometimes it's just, you need kind of a piece of your business kind of put together. And so I do that part. And then I have several clients, real estate investors, who they don't want to hire someone $100,000 a month or $100,000 a year as a COO. So they pay a fractional COO to really be their, like, yeah, their consultation, like the person that gives them the truth and is like, hey, like you need to start working with a leadership coach. This is a you problem. That
Right.
person needs to go. They're not performing. Let's look at the KPIs. So yeah, that's what a fractional COO is.
Okay. So this was a question
Yeah.
on, since you brought up Mr. Train multiple
Yeah.
times,
Hmm.
a very old Pardon the Disruption episode. And one of the questions was, should you hire to your strengths or should you hire for your weaknesses? And it's funny because I think you and I might agree on this because you keep bringing up, like, hey, you shouldn't go hire salespeople because you're probably really good at sales. You should be going out and you should be hiring the transaction coordinator because you probably
Yep.
suck at paperwork. You probably suck at following up on emails.
Yep.
You should be hiring people that are going to do your weaknesses. Is that what you agree with?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of times, like what happens is when we hire someone that is like us, there's still the gap becomes bigger. and
Facts.
and the gap just gets bigger and bigger. And so if you're a salesperson, right, usually if we're looking at like a disc assessment or a values assessment, is this from my leadership coach. I'll have to connect y'all so you can have him on here because a lot of the stuff really I learned from him. But um you're really high D and I, right? So you're really good at making decisions, but you're also empathetic with people, which is what makes really good salespeople.
Yep.
Where we lack normally, I'm pretty balanced out. Like my disc assessment, my values are like they're pretty like my I is really high because I love people, and my D's high, but my S and my C are pretty moderate. And so when I hired an executive assistant, and she's also my client success manager, her S and her C are also really, really high. So where she is really, really strong, we can really complement each other. And that's someone that's close to me. And the same thing with my transaction coordinator. Like I need them to be a driver, obviously, because I don't like to micromanage, but you need to understand that about yourself as a leader. And then it's putting the infrastructure in place, right? So you are hiring for your weaknesses. And then the next step of this is setting your expectations for people because
Right.
no one is going to meet your expectations if you don't put it together. And that's basically what we do at SOP Factory. So we build out your training curriculum, like your onboarding curriculum, your modules. We do full on like company wide onboarding training for your acquisitions rep, your dispo, your TC, whatever. I mean, whatever you want done, we create. We can do as much or as little as the business needs, really.
So talk to the business owner right now because
Mhm.
we've literally coached hundreds of students at this
Yeah.
point. And I think this is a very common question is how do you know what expectations to set for a new hire? Let's just say it's an acquisitions person.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, let's not use that. Let's use transaction coordinator.
Yeah.
How do you
That's
set
a good one.
expectations for a TC?
Yeah. So here's the thing. And I'm gonna break down like how I do this. So I always start with processes first, right? Which in this case, it's like what are all of our exit strategies, right? If we're straight wholesaling, if we're doing a flip, all of those things impact what your transaction coordinator is gonna do. So as a team, right, we start having daily huddles. What's the new deal that just came in? What is the exit strategy for that? So having the systems, right, to support that so that I can know what my next action item is. And that's where we fail as real estate investors or visionaries, is that we tell people, oh, well, it depends. It depends on this and it depends on that. And oh, just give me a second because you're overwhelmed. You don't even know what you're going to do right now.
Right.
Right. So here's the thing, if you set the expectation that all my deals get processed as wholesale deals until we have an inspection. At the inspection, I set the exit strategy. At that point, you will know who's going to the walkthrough, right? Are we
Yeah.
sending a contractor and the inspector? Are we sending an actual inspector? Like for me, in my process is if the property is tenant occupied, regardless if I'm buying it or it's wholesale or anything, I'm sending a licensed inspector. That's what I do. That's my process. That's what my TC knows to do. The reason why is because whether I'm wholesaling this or I'm keeping it, I have a full inspection report to wholesale to someone because my access is probably going to be limited. It's
Yep.
tenant occupied, right? So little things like that, and like even a tenant occupied checklist. All right, these are things that are in my contract. My TC and my acquisitions team knows. Seller to provide within 3 business days a copy of rent rolls, leases that show the actual amount that we use to analyze the deal. We put in the contract 850, 900, whatever you tell me it is, that I'm going to put that in the contract. And the reason why we do that is because I'm going to hold you accountable. My TC is going to hold you accountable that in 3 days we have that. Because what a lot of wholesalers do is they wait till 2 days before closing. They don't have the lease. They just sold the deal. The buyer thinks it's $900 and the rent roll says $5.
Yep. Dude, everything you just said right there, I mean, it was as if you were speaking to like 9 years of all of the mistakes that we've made as a wholesale company. I mean, literally,
That's it though.
as
That's
you're
what we've
using those
done.
examples, it's like, yep. I remember that one. I remember that. Literally, I remember the $900, and it was really fun. Actually, it wasn't even 500. It was, oh, they haven't paid in 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
But
It gets better.
but they're paying 900.
Yeah.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that kill you, though. Those
Yeah.
are the kind of things that make your life miserable as a business owner. And
Yeah.
and I love
And
the
can be
idea.
eliminated. They
Yeah,
can be eliminated. That's the problem. The thing is, they're causing you stress, but it's unnecessary. You're self-imposing on that.
but I love the idea of this fractional COO because you're right. You could have a COO, but more often than not, that person is so far in the game that they don't even see what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
I mean,
could
they're
they?
managing the sales team. They're holding this. And here's the thing, even if you do have that person or you're the person, right? You're in the operations role. You're holding your sales team accountable. You don't have your KPI set up. You're
Right.
having them email you what they did today. Like you cannot make decisions like that. It's impossible. Today I had a call with my construction team and I said, "Hey, cuz we're rehabbing, we're selling, we're doing so many things." And I was like, "Hey, just moving forward, which like all my other companies or all my other huddles, I need to make sure that if there's questions that you guys texted me that I didn't answer, I missed it, we're going to do a bullet point and you just hit me with questions." And we've been doing that and it's worked amazing.
Yeah.
Like you have to teach your team how to treat you. You have
I
to
love it.
treat your team how they operate, right? You can't make someone do something that they're not happy doing. You're going to be miserable yourself.
One of your other offers or
Mhm.
services that you provide, and you mentioned it earlier, is a business gap analysis.
Mhm.
What what does that mean, and how is that different? It kind of seems like it's a one-off fractional COO because
Yeah, it's just like a one time, let's look at a piece of your business and see if it's like a process problem or a system problem, or hey, you just don't have proper onboarding for this role, so this person doesn't know how to operate. Like they just don't. So the way that that works is we meet for about an hour, hour and a half, and you kind of just run me through your process. And I'm like, all right, this is a recommendation that I have. Let's look at your Podio. These are changes that you need to make into your CRM. This is an issue. You're not generating enough. You have an expectation of your team to do these things, but you're not generating enough leads for them. So I just look at it from like, I mean, as a like a business, I mean, like
Right.
a COO, and I'm just looking at it from the outside and I'm asking questions like, okay, well, when you onboarded that person, how did you train them? They're just not performing. Okay, what does that mean? What is your expectation of performance? Right?
Yep.
So it's like, all right, like let's reset expectations. A lot of time it's, hey, the best thing that I see is like, let's write out a curriculum, right? For you to record videos. I'm going to tell you exactly what the topics are going to be. All I need you to do is read that and just spitball. Like there's no script here. It's, you know, it's like if I were to say to you, RJ, if someone says, "How'd you get my number?" You're going to tell me what the answer is. You don't even have to think about it. Stop
Right.
making this complicated. It's
Yep.
1 to 2 minute videos that your team needs so that when they are stuck, not only are they being trained all the same, but when they're stuck, they have a tool and a resource to go to. And now you're
I'm
not being pulled in a million different directions.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
how often when you do these business gap analysis, or even when you're doing the fractional COO, does the business owner think their problem is over here? And in reality, once you've heard everything, you're like, no, that's not your problem. Your problem actually starts way over here. And it's
Yeah.
way different than what the actual business owner. Does that happen a lot where they think it's one thing and it's something completely different?
Yeah, because so a lot of it is like a feeling of overwhelm, right? It's like I feel out of control. So sometimes they don't really have an idea. They just feel like the team is not performing to their standard. And a
Yeah.
lot of it is like, well, what did you communicate as the standard? What is the expectation? Because people are not in your brain. And I try to explain this to people with dating, right? In dating, if you're not upfront about your boundaries, if you're not upfront about your expectations, what kind of lifestyle you want, what you're willing to get in the trenches for, what you're willing to sacrifice, that person could never, like, they don't even know what they're signing up for.
You know, it's so funny you bring that up. My cell phone has this thing where every now and then it just sends me like a notification of like random news. And it's basically whatever my cell phone has heard me talk about,
Oh, yeah, that
or,
thing's crazy.
So Sunday, sitting down with the family, gonna watch something, turned on America's Got Talent because it was like there was nothing else on TV.
Yeah.
It was like 30 minutes before bedtime. So we watched that. So my phone gives me a notification that one of the judges, Sophia, I don't know her last name, is getting divorced from Joe Manganiello, whatever. He was like one of the werewolves on True Blood.
Okay.
Because he wants to have kids and she doesn't want to have kids. And I'm like,
Bruh.
how you getting up married and you didn't know she wanted to have kids, bro?
Bro, okay, literally, I talked to this about someone, and someone said, well, he thought she was going to change her mind.
Nah. Well, you thought wrong.
That's how we hire people.
Yeah.
That's how we hire people out of desperation. And I always tell people, I'm like, it's not about what I want. It's about what the business needs. You need to remove yourself from the business. Because a lot of times it's our self-imposed, like what we want. It's not about you. The second you signed up to be a business owner, unless you plan on being by yourself for the rest of your life, and that's the same thing with dating. Like, I always tell people, I'm like, there's no way in this world that you could be alone. If you could say, oh, I'm self-made, all this stuff. Do you go to the grocery store? If you go buy your groceries at a farmer's market or the grocery store, you are not self-sufficient.
Right.
So stop playing with me. You're not. You need people. You need relationships. You need to be loved. You need people that are going to care about you. You need people that are going to call you in the middle of your shit that are going to say, bro, you're fucking up. This is how you fix this. Stop playing with yourself. Stop playing with your talent.
Majority of business owners need more people like that around them than a normal human being, because the normal human being wakes up and just goes to their job and they're told what to do and they perform. We have this self-entitlement of freedom that we can do whatever the fuck we want. And we're going to overcome any issue that comes our way, because at one point in time, we sent $300 to the Secretary of State and created an LLC and said we're a business owner because we got a logo and a website now. You know, it's like, dude, there's a lot of issues that come along with this. And
even more.
Yeah. And you and I are products of this, where 9 years ago, when we spent an astronomical amount of money, we essentially just hustled our way through getting out of that debt. And then all of a sudden, at some point in time, and you and I were probably going through it at the same time, 2018, 2019, you know, COVID, I hate to say it this way. I don't mean it disrespectfully, but COVID was one of the best things that ever happened for titanium, because it forced us, like literally forced us, because the world changed. We had to change.
Yep.
And otherwise,
sometimes it takes that.
We were just going to keep running down the track that we were on. So before we started the podcast, I want to wrap up with, you know, you're 9 years in this journey. You've got everything that's going on, but now you're truly getting to live the life that you want. And I think it's easy to see it on you. I mean,
thank you.
You smile all the time. You seem like the happiest person in the world right now.
I am.
Talk about like what your life looks like now, you know, and like as a business owner, what does that look like, and where do you want to go in the future?
Yeah. So I am the happiest, and it doesn't mean that everything's perfect. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that. It doesn't mean that money's coming through. I was on the phone with my construction team. I said, we might have to take a loss here. We'll make it up over here. Like, that is what business ownership is about, right? Like, you're going to take some losses here. You're going to put it over here. It's going to balance out. You're still making money. Like, that's what it is. So for me, it was really a mindset shift, right? And it was, what is this teaching me? Right? And who is going to benefit from this information, right? Is it going to be a tenant? Is it going to be an employee? Is it going to be you, right? Is it going to be someone else? And so that's really what I've focused on mostly the last 2 years. I've really surrounded myself, kind of like what you said, like that, the people around you. And some, you know, I'm actually in Miami with one of my best friends, and we met on Instagram 13 years ago. And I say this because there's people around you that, even if they don't understand the business, that you need to let them step into your space. You need to let them like heal parts of yourself. Like, that is part of it. And through relationships is how we learn. And so that's what I've really focused on the last couple years. But right now, I'm running all the companies. I have a private equity firm with one of my business partners. And so we kind of invest in like small things and help people scale. And then small, like, you know, millions of dollars. But it's all a balance, right? And so I think in this season of my life, I'm single, I don't have kids, and I get to run my businesses from anywhere. You know, I have great teams. I run it with daily huddles, and each daily huddle has an agenda, and I get to say my piece of it, and then people go do. I don't like to micromanage, right? So that's the life that I want. Like, some people want an office environment. Some people want to be in that space. That's just not my desire in life. I want to be able to pick up and leave. So I'm in the process of selling my house, my personal house that I own. I sold my lake house. And those were more like stands for me. They weren't like necessarily like, oh, you need to do this or you need to do that. It was more of a stand of like, I don't know what the next season looks like for me. Whether it's a partner, a husband, or whatever it is, I'm not sure. But let's just go figure it out. And like, let's just make a lot of money in the process. Let's help people. Let's impact them. And I think that's really what my life looks like right now. I haven't lived close to my family in like 15 years. And that's been like on my heart. My brother has 2 little kids. I come from an amazing family. And so just doing more of the things that, like, the reason why I got into real estate. Like, I feel like we get so sidetracked from like the reason why you started was for freedom, but then you build a business that you don't even like. So just getting back to that.
Are you okay talking about the travel?
Yeah.
Where are you traveling here?
So my goal, so I'm 33 years old. And my goal is to go to every country in South America, with the exception of Venezuela. And I don't say that for any bad reason. I'm Venezuelan and I'm Cuban, but Venezuela is not one of the stops that I'm going to be making. And if you know anything about the world, you know why. But so my goal is to get to see every country in South America before 35. But I just recently decided that I'm probably going to travel for 6 months. and run the businesses and still wholesale and still operate and leverage a team and lead a team virtually. And yeah, so I'm going to go to South America. I'm going to travel. I'm going to be stateside and kind of go back and forth. I have speaking engagements in November. And I just, yeah, I mean, I've had the conversation, with my partners. I have different partners for different businesses, and this is just what feels good for me in this season.
I love it. I'm just gonna make a prediction. I mean, I have this feeling that in like 2024, Christina's suddenly gonna have this like amazing Brazilian boyfriend. I mean, she just suddenly
Brazilian.
one day there's gonna be this post of this Brazilian man, and it's gonna be like,
I'm going to pop up on Instagram
and your whole
married and
caption,
pregnant.
your whole caption is gonna be, "This is my next season."
I'll tag you in it after. I'll be like, you were right.
I love it so
My
much.
future so well.
Oh man,
I love it. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
yeah. All right, last question.
Yes.
Question. More of a joke than anything. Um, in 2020, when Carlos Reyes brutally stole the Closers Olympics from me, okay, as a judge, and they fired him and brought you in. Are you the best decision that the Closers Olympics has ever made as a judge?
Not anything to do with Carlos Reyes. I actually really like him a lot.
Me too. We're buddies. We're buddies.
I like him a lot.
Take the fact what he did.
So I think honestly, I love being a part of Closers Olympics. I think that I get to give like a different perspective, and I like to operate from a super unbiased perspective, right? Like it's like let's just judge the thing that it is. And I think that's just kind of how I live my life. Like what you did prior, what you did next doesn't really matter. Like let's just focus on the right now. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm a good decision.
I have to admit, I mean, I went last on Saturday, which is the day that you judged, and I watched the entire thing. So I got to watch you, Steve, and Mitt.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed your commentary, also your relentlessness on making sure you were on there, because you had this like thunderstorm, you lost power, you had generators. One more time, you're in the car. Yeah, I'm like, oh, poor girl. She's probably sweating her ass off in that car.
Oh no, I had the AC blowing. We was good.
I love it. So
I had a full tank of gas. We're good.
But I loved hearing your feedback, specifically when it came to like decisions that they were making, like based off of the acquisition strategy and the exit strategies. You were like, hey, we could pick this up. We could novate this. This is gonna be a good deal. I really got to see like
how
the
my brain
real
operates.
estate investor come out in you. And that was a lot of fun.
It's crazy because for a lot of the clients, one of the biggest things that they waste a lot of time on is deal analyzing, right? Yeah. And a lot of people are like, well, just do the 70% of ARV and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, like that's not how this works. Right. Like you have to analyze a rental based on cash flow. You have to analyze a novation based on the expenses. Like you have to analyze a rehab based off of that. Like, yes, that's a great starting point. But when you're actually operating the business at a high level, one of the things that we built, and not to like get too into it, is like when you fill out this one thing, this form, it'll allow you to analyze the deal as all these things. Based on how you do it, right? Like how do you analyze? Because everybody does it different. Right? Like everybody analyzes deals different. So build that for your team, build them some consistency, and like a spreadsheet that allows them to kind of see everything at one time.
Or
you can hire me.
Option, just go to sopfactory.io. Okay. That's the better option, because if you could have built it, you probably would have already done it. And let's be honest, you're just lying to yourself. You're not actually going to build it. So just hire Kristina. Okay.
My team is amazing.
And I'm saying it's like literally, I'm not a client of Kristina. I'm a friend of Kristina's, and
you know a lot of my clients though.
Yes, I do, and I love watching your journey. So we've got SOP Factory, but where can people follow you so they can see that Brazilian boyfriend you're gonna have in 2024?
Kristina Aguilera _ on Instagram. I'm super active on there. I answer all my DMs. I am very, very like big on community and allowing people space. I do share a lot of business information, but I also share my personal life. Traveling, doing the things that we got into this business for. So that's what you can find on my Instagram.
You also have a broadcast channel on your Instagram,
I
and
do.
you are the only one that I follow. Just so
Thank
you
you.
know. There you
Thank
go.
you. I
All right, Miss
appreciate that.
Kristina,
Thank you
thank you
so
for
much.
coming on. It's
Love
been
you.
a
Thank
long
you.
time coming. I tried to
It
get
is.
you on here when you were that angry landlord. I tried to
Yeah,
get
but
you
see
on
that
here.
it wasn't good then.
I
That's
know, right?
I'm just glad it didn't work out that way.
So we've been
Thank
trying
you.
for 6 years. We finally got the happiest Kristina Aguilera ever.
Thank
Thank you,
you so
Kristina.
much. Bye.